pre-pandemic, it was widely believed that in India, rental housing was giving yields of only 2 to 3%. Co-living and especially even sub-segments like student housing were supposed to offer much higher yields. So there was this whole story, basically a discussion and debate saying that there is a philosophy behind it. You can get much higher yields by investing in student housing. Has that changed now?
The amount of rentals that we as co-living operators can give for a residential property, that's way better to any individual would give for that rental property.
Sure.
So we are definitely in a capacity to pay better rents in terms of residential building. That is why we have seen it, even Chinmoy would agree to it, that acquiring properties or getting properties, entire buildings on rent, if you consider 2 years back, was a challenge, because even the builders were not very aware of the entire concept. So they were not developing properties with a student housing angle in mind. But if you see today, our home ground is from Bombay, so we have started our operation in Juhu area. Typically, it goes to Narsimunji College. So getting a student housing building in that area was a challenge. It has been a challenge for past 5 to 6 years. However, if you see the trend today, there are 8 to 10 projects which are coming in 2 years down the line, which are surely being built with a student housing aim in mind. They're typically being designed for student housing purpose, which was earlier not the case. So even the builders have got more acquainted with the idea of student housing, yet they are developing properties with keeping this segment in mind, which is of course beneficial to us. And of course, the core reason being that we are in a position to pay better rental as compared to any individual family or individual person would pay, who is an end user to the residential property. Because there are hardly people who use a residential property for a commercial purpose. They are normally end users. So we pay better rent as compared to any end user. So even the landlords are more inclined to give properties to us rather than renting out to individuals.
I definitely say that. I mean, as you rightly said, it was about 3 to 4% in residential. I think the promise in student housing co-living was somewhere between 8.8, 8.5 to 10, 11. And because the industry was also is still so nascent, say in India, that I think a lot of this promise of returns is still quite anecdotal, borrowed from the Western markets, which started slightly before us in terms of the whole co-living. So as Bharat rightly mentioned, a lot of developers are looking at the purpose-built student units, PBSUs, or built-to-suit co-living facilities, and so on. There is another big thing that is catching up, Sid, is the entire concept of fractional ownership. So real estate developers, operators like us, getting onto a fractional ownership platform and having the retail investors fund the entire construction with the promise of a certain return. So I think that concept is also catching up. And yes, I agree with Bharat that lot more of real estate groups are recognizing this as a genuine asset class. And it's no longer a division between residential and commercial, which essentially means shops or offices. But I think student housing and co-living is something that is generating significant interest in the developer community. And so it is good for operators like us because we lack the nuances of actually getting into a real estate construction and building something, and they lack the entrepreneurial spirit, or you could say the whole passion behind driving and managing something. So I think that's a good marriage, and it is definitely here to stay and grow.